Welcome. This is For Better and Worth,
the podcast where we don't believe you have to sacrifice your relationship while you build your net worth.
We are your hosts.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ericka Young. And we're so glad you joined us today.
All right, y'all, come on. Let's get into it. Hey, people, back on the airways again at the For Better and Worth podcast.
Yes, we are glad to be here at the table and on the mic. So what's up, husband? What are we talking about today?
Look, I think we're going to get into some of that visionary, thinking. But sometimes, vision can be clouded with realism. And so we're going to talk a little bit about visionary versus reality.
Listen, wait a minute. We not clouding nothing, okay? Listen, I'm about to take offense already in the very beginning of the podcast because clearly I am the realist, okay? I am the realist.
I wasn't pointing any fingers. I'm just setting the tone for what the conversation will be about.
Listen. No. But yeah, we're going to talk about having a vision and also being real about what's happening. So I'm really eager to get into it because I feel like we need to talk about both. Both are necessary in relationships. And so, I'm curious, honey, like, what do you see being a visionary means? What does that mean to you?
Look, I think in my life, I've always been someone to cast vision.
Mm-hmm.
To think big, to think long term, to think about how to accomplish great things. And it's thinking about planning and the future, tapping into your imagination and then taking some wisdom and applying it. And it's funny when we talk about vision, I was recently with my nephew and he was asking me some questions about, just my life. We grew up in similar circumstance and, he's seen different things that I've been able to do in my life. And we talked about how I figured out what the plan was and then I executed. And so for me, the plan was creating the vision because though it wasn't where I was at today, I was looking at where I wanted to be or where I wanted to go. And it's been the same thing with us and our marriage and our journey together. It's like, okay, where are we at? But where do we want to go?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that's kind of what I say visionary is thinking about not just where you're at today, but being able to see beyond today and look to the future and what your outcome or what your outcomes are that you're trying to work towards. Yeah. And I really think of that as being a visionary.
So I think that that's important. And I'll be very honest and say I'm not as much of a visionary as you are. I like to execute to the vision. I like to get practical with the vision and have steps to get there.
Absolutely.
But I'm also not, like, it doesn't come first to think about the future so easily as it does to you. And so sometimes I have to embrace your vision to get clarity on what that means to me and us and our family, because you definitely will think big. You're always constantly 3 to 5 steps, not 2 to 3 steps ahead. You are absolutely all the time 3 to 5 steps ahead. And when I'm on steps 1 and 2, I'm like, I'm missing something.
Right. What's so funny is I even think about we had all these projects around the house and we talked about, we were going to do some remodeling and we were just talking about it. And I was like, I had the view, I saw what I wanted, I could picture it. And you were like, well, hold on. You going way too fast. And it took a while for us to get on the same page to even be able to have a conversation about what we were going to do, because I'm like, I can see it. I can almost feel it, imagine it, touch it. But I think that's what makes us a good team, is because I can see all of that. But then when you come along and you are very practical.
I am. And if there were a definition for me for realist, it would be practical. I
Yes,
mean,
those are definitely synonyms that.
for me, absolutely. I am practical. I am all about how does this change today? Like
Yes.
how does the vision we want for the future affect today's picture? And so for instance, you know, you want to make sure that we have a solid future for retirement. We have dollars for retirement or what have you, and accumulate wealth down the line. Me, I'm thinking, how much is this per month today? And is there anything in our budget, in our way of living on a monthly basis, needing to adjust so that that future is bright? You are not as interested in the details of how to adjust for today. That's not immediately on your radar. But if you talk about the future, I'm immediately thinking, what does that change for today? As a matter of fact, the other day you said something about we probably need to begin to save again for another car. And then immediately I was like, what adjustments do we need to make? You said something that didn't look like it was going to be a good thing the other day as well. And I was like, wait a minute. How does that change the budget? Right? Like, what do we need to adjust? Immediately, I went to the practical side. And I don't always say those things, but immediately my mind goes to
You don't have look.
the
You don't even
realist.
have to say it because I already know. I can see it. Like it's like your
My wheels get to
brain.
turning.
It's like your brain opened up, and I can see the wheels turning.
Yes, the wheels are always turning because that's the engineer in me. That's the person who's calculating. And when you were talking about the renovation, I could not see how the pieces were fitting in together. And so all of your vision was overwhelming me.
Yeah.
And so I there were a couple of switches that had to flip in order for us to get on the same page. And the truth is that it probably took a month or two.
Yeah, but you know what? That's where I become the realist as well. Because though I have all this vision, I know that sometimes, we could write the vision, so that you can see it, but I've got to come back and I've got to, piecemeal it. Like, okay, look, don't take all this. This isn't all happening at once. Here's what we're going to do. And then when I lay the steps out for you and I give you more explanation along the way of, okay, here's step one, this is what we need to do. Here's step two, here's step three, opposed to me being on step 3 or 4 and you're back at step one, I know that if I come back and I help walk you through those steps, you'll get on board with the vision and you'll be very practical and help make sure we stay on budget, we stay on target. And while I'm out, I'm going back to step 5 and 6, you'll still be able to help track us along. So I think that's really what helps us. And I think that's what people who are listening to this, that's what you've got to realize. Who's the visionary and who's the realist? And how do you find a fine balance between the two of you?
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that is important is in different areas of life, one person might be the visionary and the other person might be the realist. And so
hmm
I'm real curious. Do you feel like you can quickly identify a place where I'm a visionary?
Well, I don't know if this was a loaded question,
No,
but
no, no, not at all. Not
but
at
I
all.
was I was literally just thinking. You said something recently because we're talking about, we've talked about how we're at different phases in life, and we're thinking downstream of, when we can stop working, and we got some time to go. But you were talking about bridging the gap, like, well, if you decide that you want to stop working in corporate America, and there's a time frame between stopping working and being able to access retirement funds or other monies, we need to do A, B, or C, or A, B, and C. And I was like, man, okay, I hadn't even thought about that. And that's when I saw your visionary side come out, because you were thinking not about today, you were thinking about like future tense, and saying, okay, well, he might decide he don't want to keep working, and if that happens, then we need to do this so we don't tap into our retirement funds early. And I was like, man, that is such a good idea, because I literally hadn't thought about that as an option or a possibility. And so I was like, ooh, okay. then I became a realist.
Yeah.
And so in that case, you were the visionary, and I became the realist because I was like, okay, that means we got to do this.
Yes.
Like we got emergency fund, we got this, but okay, and then we got to do this. So I started thinking about how we could do
Yeah.
what you were talking about as
Right.
a vision.
That's so good.
And
That's so
so
good.
I think, like you said, it goes back and forth. It's not a hat that I wear exclusively of being visionary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a hat that you wear exclusively of being a realist because, you know, I'm very practical with a lot of stuff. I have my limits on what I will spend money on or what I place value on. And it's like, oh no, I don't place value or I'm not spending money on that. So no.
And I think you are much more of a realist when it comes to, for lack of a better way to put it, this is like a broad way to say it, but in all of the ways that we update our home, or if we're working with a person, like getting our car fixed or having some repairs done on the house, or you are much more aware of what needs to happen today with those things. And I'm the kind of person, I'm just like, big picture. I'm thinking more big picture in those moments, and you're thinking very practical, real right now. And you actually, on those types of things, tend to have an urgency to where it has to be a right now type of thing. So, for instance, this happened today when we were driving the car that just got fixed. The realist in you kicked in and was thinking about, when are we going to get this back in? Because we heard a sound we shouldn't have heard on the car. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. Like, one, I'm not even interested. Like, big picture, is this going to matter to the grand scheme of life? I don't know. But you automatically were like, we probably going to have to start thinking about when we're going to take this back in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're the realist. You're like, if something isn't 100% right, especially if we got it fixed and it makes sense, but that realist kicked in, and my vision was bigger. Like, we may not even have this car in a year from now.
Look, I'm going to take a side journey here because I did something
Uh-oh.
that I probably would not do again.
What was that?
I purchased a warranty on my car when I bought it. Bought a used car. Just so people know, you know, we typically don't buy new cars. We buy cars that are a couple years old.
I don't think we've ever bought a new car in our 25 years of marriage, honey, right?
I think we bought a car that the newest car we had was a year old.
Yeah,
But
I bought a new car when I was in college. That was a dumb mistake. But
yeah,
again,
but the whole point is that, you know, I wouldn't buy another warranty. Okay. And we bought a car that, in hindsight, it was a very reliable car that really didn't require a warranty. And so it's getting it's getting a little further along, and we've had it for a few years. And I was like, man, I done bought this warranty. I was like, if I hear anything, I'm taking it in.
Mm-hmm.
And I took it in and found something wrong, and they fixed it. Then I heard another squeak or a sound. I took it in. They found something big, fixed it. I was like, listen, people, I'm in the positive now. Okay, I didn't got all my money back for the warranty. Plus, I'm on their money now.
Right, exactly.
So if I hear a squeak, I'm like, while the car is still under this warranty, I'm taking it in.
Right.
So bottom line, people, get your money.
That's right.
Get your money's worth, and just, don't buy no warranties.
Well, and I also think that we bought the warranty because of the previous vehicle that we had that died in the middle of the road. It was a whole.
It was an emotional. It could have been an emotional thing at that time.
It was emotional, and it was also the rebound response to that experience with that previous car. So I think part of it was the moment in time for the assurance of not having to worry about it.
That's
right?
true, because we had a car that wasn't old, and
Right.
I'm gonna just say because of a design flaw.
Yes, it was.
The engine blew, and we were like, oh my God. They
Yes.
were like $10,000 to fix. I was like, well, hold on.
We're not doing that.
Right. We're gonna get another car.
Right.
But anyway.
We digress. But the point is that immediately your realist kicked in, and you were like,
Yes.
we are, and that was the practical side of you that was like, all right, we getting our money's worth. These people not about to shake us down for no money. You know what I mean? And so while I appreciate that, the thought process for me was big picture.
You're like, we probably gonna get rid of this car.
Right. I'm first of all, I was like, I'm tired of dealing with the car in the last month, basically, because there have been some repairs and I've been without my vehicle and that kind of thing. But also, like, For me, those kinds of things get exhausting. And for you, you kick into gear. You kick into gear. And so,
I'm like, look, I take it up there. Don't worry about it. I
right,
do.
exactly. And so I think that, we have to play off each other, right? And I think the biggest thing that I have even learned in the work that I do when I talk with couples around their money is we don't value and appreciate what the other person is bringing to the table enough. Right. So we might say, oh, I love this about you, or I appreciate this about you. But in practical terms, in everyday life, do you let them know that what they're bringing to the table that's positive to your money management, your communication, or dealing with the kids or your relationship? Are you letting them know that what they're bringing is valuable? Because it's important to both of us that we have a vision for the future and we're going after something, our goals are being accomplished and reached and striving for. And it's also important that we take care of today and we balance the checkbook. We make sure that the bills are paid and that there's money in the account, and we're, taking advantage of something that we
Right.
paid for. And so I think that both are necessary, and it's easy to say, when someone doesn't see our point of view or our way of seeing life, that they're wrong. And we can't make wrong something that the spouse brings to the table.
Yeah, and you just said it. Both are necessary. And sometimes it's easy to think that, one is more important than the other. And they're not. You need to be a visionary and a realist, and I need to be a visionary and a realist at different times. It's that whole yin and yang effect, because that helps us balance each other out. And if we were both the same, one of us is unnecessary.
Right. You know what I
Okay,
mean? Like,
if it's just two visionaries and we just pie in the sky daydreaming all the time, we're never going to get any of that accomplished. Because if you just have this vision but you don't have any means by which to execute, or you're not being practical and that vision isn't grounded in any level of reality, it's just a wish.
woo, that's
It's some
good.
hopes. It's not really a vision, because a vision should be designed to give you thought and foresight and give you a path to get there. But you got to do things to execute on that path to see that vision come to life. And so that's why both are necessary, and you really do have to strike a balance, because in moments that I need to be a realist, you should be casting vision. And when I'm casting vision, I need you to be a realist and have that reality, that practical side of things, and help me to go through and accomplish it.
You know what's so interesting? I appreciate you saying that, because sometimes we have had places where you're like, doggone it. Like, why? Like, I think in your mind, you're like, this woman, she always trying to squash my dreams. Like, because I'll get
Like,
real.
let me live, woman.
Right. Right. Because, and so, again, putting this into practice on a daily basis can sometimes be challenging, right? And so I'm not going to, we can't even act like it's so easy to appreciate what the other person brings to the table.
Like, I got a vision for getting my electric bike.
Oh, Lord.
And you like, well, do you really need a bike? You got a bike. You don't ride that enough.
Right. Because we went and test rode some electric bikes. And as soon as he got off of his little test ride,
Get me an electric
he
bike.
was like, oh, I'm getting one of these. Literally, your words were, oh, I'm getting one of these. This was not even a conversation. This was I'm getting one of these. And I was like,
I think it's because, people who know us, they know that we are venturous people. And, what was it? A couple years ago, we took motorcycle lessons, and we were like, we getting motorcycles, we getting Harleys, and we were like, hold on, now it was fun, but I have a real respect.
Yes, and I want to stay alive, so that was good in that moment.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe this is I'm riding around my motorcycle helmet and my gloves on my electric bike, looking like people laughing at me like he couldn't get a real bike. So.
You said it, I didn't. But I think that's so true though. Like it's like we can't put the other one down or act like the other person is because of how they are or how they're showing up in that moment, that they're against you. You know what I mean?
Right.
This really isn't a versus. It's an and, visionary and a
I
realist.
guess if you and I both could sing and we had a music catalog, we could have made it a versus.
That's true.
But seeing as how, we don't have any music repertoire or
No.
yeah, so it shouldn't be a versus.
I don't even have that gifting, honey. That is not me. Although you be in church acting like you can throw down, like you should be on the stage singing.
That's because everybody's making noise at that time.
Yes,
So
make a joyful noise unto the Lord, and that's what we do. So, but neither is better than the other, and so I think I would love it if the visionary and the realist in any situation, if we started looking for how that is adding value in the moment. That would be really great. Because what you said about wishful thinking, we can't stay in wishful thinking. We need to have a balance of realism with the vision so that we're not pie in the sky type of thinking. And I love that you said that because I've heard people say some wild things about what their goals and dreams are, and I don't squash them. And what I tend to say is, so how are we going to get there? What is the very first step in making progress there? And if we can get to that first step, then the second step will be easier to see.
yeah. So as people are listening to this and they're trying to apply, how does this, apply to me? And we talk about, relationships and money on our podcast here. I think you have to take a moment and say, like, think about people who are trying to get out of debt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're listening out there and you're on your debt journey, you have to have a vision of what getting out of debt looks like. And I think it's important to paint that picture for both spouses. Like, if this is where we're at today, let's create a vision of what it looks like to be out of debt. Like, what freedoms come with that? What flexibilities come with that? What extras come with that? How will life look and feel different?
Yeah, that's good.
Now, you have that vision, then you have to get realistic and say, okay, this is what it looks like, man. And you can almost feel it like, man, I feel free. We can eat out a little more. We can spend a little more on clothing, or we can, do something to update the house or whatever that looks like for you when you're out of debt. Then say, okay, now today, let's talk about how do we get there?
Yeah.
Because when you have that vision and you get realistic, I think sometimes it's going to help you be willing to make more sacrifices, make more compromises, make more commitments today to execute in reality, in practical terms, to get to that vision.
That's so good.
And I think that's exactly how someone who's listening has to say, vision, realist, realist, what does that mean to me? And I think that is one way you can do it. And that's just on the finance side. You can do the same thing with the relationship side of it. Because if your relationship today isn't what you want it to look like in the future, okay, take a moment and build the picture of what that could look like in the future.
That's good.
Then come back and say, well, the reality is I need to be thinking about them more than myself. I need to be doing this a little bit more. Maybe I should say less of this and more of that.
Yeah.
Because then that reality, that practical side helps lead to that vision that you've created.
That's so good. And I feel like it also forces you to think about how you can stretch and flex and capitalize on each other's strengths. I think that's part of this conversation as well, is that it is a strength to be both a visionary and a realist. It is a strength. And so again, they're not against each other. It should stretch you to think outside the box a little bit. And one of the words that you used when we were talking about this was, it can't be based in fantasy, right? So our vision cannot be based in fantasy. I had someone, and
I'm sorry.
You're stop.
I'm sorry.
See, you laughing before I could get it out. You're laughing before I could get it out of my mouth. I had someone who told me they I'm gonna be a trillionaire, and I said, "Oh Lord," I said, "All right,
I was like,
okay."
are there any documented trillionaires out there? Okay, okay, that's
And
bold.
right, and so the thing is instead of saying, "Oh, you crazy," um, I said, "So what is the very next step?" Right, and so in this particular case, this person really wanted to get a home. And so one of the steps in getting a home is, of course, to make sure you have the income and all of that. But I was looking at her credit and saying, all right, this is what you need to do in order to improve your credit to get to that next step where you can be a homeowner. And so, fantastic. One day you want to be a trillionaire. That is great. What is something that is within reach that will help you to stretch today? And how can I help you be real and practical to get to that thing? And so I had to literally pull her vision into something that was within reach versus squash the vision, because we laugh now. Like when I shared it with you, you literally you bust out laughing.
But that's like good coaching though,
Yeah.
and that's just high level,
Mhm.
a high level example. You didn't share details, but it's just
Right.
like it's just a high level example, and I think that's a sign of good coaching, and that's why coaching is so important and
Mhm.
necessary. Is that sometimes you need someone who's outside
Yeah.
to be able to look and see, what your vision is and help you get to the realistic side of it. Not saying that you couldn't accomplish that vision, because I would love to see this person be the first documented trillionaire
Yep.
out there. And look, I get on board with people's vision, but like you can't be living in fantasy land, like remember the old show Fantasy Island?
Right.
Mr. Rourke and Tattoo, the plane boss. It's like you gotta be, realistic with what you're striving towards. So
Yeah, I think that's the other thing is I think it's important not to squash people's dreams.
well, I think you gotta have a vision for today,
Yeah.
and that vision shifts and changes.
Mhm.
And I think people who listen to us have heard us talk about how we've shifted and changed, and our vision has changed over the years.
Mhm.
And I remember I still have this notebook that I don't know, it was probably 20 years ago. I wrote in this notebook like my top 100 things to do or that I wanted, and I couldn't even write 100. I got to like 80 something. But I still have that notebook, and I go back and I look at it sometimes, and I've been able to check off so many things that were on that list. But I've replaced those with other things because
Mhm.
I've changed. My thought process has changed. And so I've really just started to write down other things that are visions, because that might have been good for then, but then I'm trying to restate what it looks like now as a vision, and it will help me accomplish the goals that I have in front of me.
Yeah, that's so good. You know what's interesting is I realized that until our children were out of the home, and specifically the last one going to college, many of the visionary type of things or the future planning involved them. And one thing that I wrestled with when our daughter went to college was, what did I want? Or when I was even thinking about her going to college and leaving, is what did I want professionally? How did my professional vision need to adjust now that I don't have her activities to attend to? And I honestly felt like I could throw myself into my work. And that is interesting because I think a lot of people, we base a lot of our vision on our family. And I think that a lot of the times when our family dynamic shifts, we aren't prepared for how that changes our vision, right? And our scope, and how, like, relationally, you and I shift. And our vision for us and what we want changes when the kids get out of the home. And so, um, that's something I feel like I'm still a little bit wrestling with, and trying to seek a balance there too. Is realistically, I still have stuff that I want to enjoy while the kids aren't with us, but I also want them to be a part of, how we're planning for the future. And so things shifts at different phases of life. And so I think that it's important that we pay attention to some of that too.
I think what you're talking about is we almost have simultaneous visions. We have visions for what we want to accomplish today and how we want to move things today, and visions for what the future can look like, and incorporating them and their future families and stuff like that. And I think that's okay, because you've got a plan. I'm very much so in live now, live for the moment, experience life, but I'm also very much so about plan for the future and be realistic in how we accomplish that and incorporate them and their futures into that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good thing. But I think this has been it's been a good conversation here. So as we wrap up here, I mean, when we talk about visionary and realist, how do you make it worth it?
I think it's worth it to remember that everybody has a strength that they're bringing to the table, and whatever they're showing up as, the visionary or the realist in that moment, appreciate the strength that they're bringing to the table in that moment. And I would even say, make sure that you speak it, because that appreciation can go a long way in a relationship for sure.
Well, when I think about making it worth it in this context, I say dream big. You know, dream big, because it stretches you and it forces you to develop muscles that maybe you didn't have or you weren't using before. So I say dream big, because that will get you to thinking about it, and then get real practical with it. And that's where that realist side comes into play, because you put practical steps in place to accomplish that goal, that vision, that dream. And so I say that's really how you make it worth it, is to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't dream, then you can't actually put steps in place to work towards that. So
Absolutely.
get busy doing it, people. Get busy making it happen out there. Be a visionary and be a realist, and appreciate what each brings to the table.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know what? This is what we have for today. We're so glad that you tuned in. We hope that this has been helpful. Go cast that vision and create a practical plan to get there. And until next time,
we're out. Thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
We appreciate all your support. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to this podcast.
You can find us on Instagram at For Better and Worth.
And sign up for our email on forbetterandworth.com.
Till next time, we're out of here.